On January 19, 2025, President Joe Biden, in a significant and historic move on his last full day in office, issued a series of pardons that included the posthumous pardon of Marcus Garvey, a prominent black nationalist leader from the early 20th century. This act was part of a broader initiative by Biden to address historical injustices and emphasize the importance of second chances in the American justice system. Historical context of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey was a Jamaican-born political leader and activist who played a crucial role in the early 20th century black nationalist movement. In the 1920s, he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association (UNIA) and advocated for the economic and cultural empowerment of black people. His advocacy for racial pride and self-determination inspired numerous civil rights leaders, including Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., despite his significant contributions to the empowerment of black communities. Garvey was convicted of mail fraud in 1923, a charge that many historians and advocates believe was politically motivated in an effort to undermine his influence. After serving time, he was deported to Jamaica, where he continued to promote his message until his death in 1940. The pardons issued by Biden. Biden's announcement included not only Garvey's pardon but also clemency for 4 other individuals. 1. Don Scott, the first black Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, who served 7 years in prison for drug-related charges in the 1990s. Scott expressed deep gratitude for the pardon, highlighting the importance of second chances. 2. Ravi Ragbar, an immigrant rights activist who faced deportation after being convicted of a nonviolent offense. His advocacy work has been pivotal in fighting for immigrant rights. 3. Kemba Smith Pradia, a criminal justice reform advocate who was convicted of a drug offense in 1994 and sentenced to 24 years in prison. Her sentence was commuted in 2000 by President Bill Clinton, but the pardon served to further acknowledge her work in prison reform. 4. Darrell Chambers, a gun violence prevention advocate who was convicted of a drug offense and served 17 years in prison. His advocacy work focuses on preventing gun violence in communities. In addition to these pardons, Biden commuted the sentences of 2 individuals, Michelle West and Robin Peoples, further reflecting his administration's commitment to criminal justice reform. Biden's vision for clemency. In his remarks, Biden framed the pardons as part of a broader commitment to the principle of second chances, a theme he has emphasized throughout his presidency. He stated America is a country built on the promise of second chances and expressed hope that these actions would help fulfill that promise. Biden's record in office has been notable for the unprecedented number of pardons and commutations issued, particularly focused on nonviolent offenders and those affected by the harsh sentencing laws of previous decades. The timing of these pardons is also significant, as they come just before the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump, raising questions about the future of clemency and justice reform in the incoming administration. Some advocates worry that the shift in power could lead to a reversal of progress made during Biden's presidency. Reactions to the pardons. Reactions to the pardons have varied. Supporters of Garvey and the other pardoned individuals welcomed the decision as a necessary step in acknowledging and rectifying historical injustices. Many advocates for criminal justice reform praised Biden for his continued commitment to addressing systemic issues in the justice system, particularly for marginalized communities. Conversely, some critics argue that the pardons, while symbolically important, do not go far enough in addressing the broader systemic issues of racial injustice and inequality within the American legal system. They call for more comprehensive reforms that address root causes and provide meaningful support for those affected by crime and incarceration. Conclusion. Biden's posthumous pardon of Marcus Garvey and the clemency granted to other individuals on January 19, 2025 mark a significant chapter in the ongoing dialogue about justice, redemption, and the legacy of historic figures in the fight for civil rights. By emphasizing the importance of second chances and addressing past injustices, Biden's actions not only reflect his administration's values but also resonate with a broader societal desire for healing and reconciliation. These pardons serve as a reminder of the complexities of justice in America and the need for continued advocacy and reform to ensure a fair and equitable system for all. On January 19, 2025, President Joe Biden pardoned Marcus Garvey, a historical figure known for his role as a black nationalist and leader in the early 20th century, among other individuals. This act of clemency, occurring on Biden's last full day in office, underscores a notable moment in U.S. political history, particularly in the context of racial justice and criminal justice reform. The counterintuitive aspect of this situation lies in several layers. 1. Historical context of Garvey's conviction. While Garvey was convicted of mail fraud in the 1920s, many historians contend that his conviction was politically motivated, intended to suppress his growing influence among African Americans. This perspective challenges conventional views on justice and legality, suggesting that legal systems can be used as tools of political oppression rather than mere arbiters of justice. 2. Biden's record on clemency. Biden's presidency has seen an unprecedented number of pardons and commutations, particularly focusing on nonviolent offenders. This push for clemency contrasts sharply with the more punitive approaches historically taken by other administrations, especially in the context of the war on drugs. The counterintuitive element here is the shift in narrative. A president known for his long-standing ties to the establishment is using his final moments in office to promote a message of rehabilitation and redemption, which is traditionally associated with more progressive politicians. 3. The symbolism of timing. The decision to issue these pardons on the eve of the transition to a new administration led by Donald Trump, who has a history of tough-on-crime rhetoric, serves as a stark juxtaposition. It raises questions about the legacy of Biden's administration and the potential for a future return to more punitive policies. The counterintuitive notion is that such progressive actions are taken in the twilight of a presidency that may soon see a reversal of these ideals. For public reaction and political implications, the public and political response to Biden's pardons reflects a complex landscape where notions of justice, redemption, and historical reckoning clash. Some view the pardoning of figures like Garvey as necessary for rectifying historical wrongs, while others might perceive it as a political maneuver to bolster a legacy of social justice. This dichotomy underscores the counterintuitive reality of how actions meant to promote healing can also be viewed with skepticism in a politically charged environment. 5. Clemency as a political tool. The act of issuing pardons has traditionally been a powerful political tool, often used to shore up support or mitigate backlash from specific constituencies. Biden's emphasis on second chances aligns with broader societal calls for reform in criminal justice, yet also raises questions about whether such actions are genuinely altruistic or strategically calculated. In summary, Biden's pardoning of Marcus Garvey and others highlights a range of counterintuitive elements that challenge typical narratives around justice, political maneuvering, and the role of clemency within the framework of U.S. governance. The act of pardoning a figure like Garvey, who was historically oppressed, serves both as a corrective measure and a reminder of the complexities inherent in the pursuit of justice and redemption. On January 19, 2025, President Joe Biden issued a series of pardons, notably posthumously, for Marcus Garvey, the influential black nationalist leader. This act on the final day of his presidency not only highlights the significance of Garvey's contributions but also underscores broader themes of redemption and systemic injustice in the American justice system. Significance of Marcus Garvey's pardon. 1. Historical context and impact. Garvey, convicted of mail fraud in the 1920s, was a prominent figure advocating for black pride and self-determination. His influence extended to later civil rights leaders including Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., who recognized Garvey's role in empowering black communities. By pardoning Garvey, Biden acknowledges the historically unjust treatment of black leaders and the political motivations behind their prosecutions. This recognition serves to correct historical narratives that often marginalized these figures. 2. Political motivation behind conviction. Many commentators noted that Garvey's conviction was politically motivated, aimed at stifling his growing influence. This context is crucial as it raises questions about the fairness of the legal system, particularly regarding how it has been wielded against marginalized communities. Biden's pardon can be seen as an effort to confront and rectify these past injustices, reinforcing the idea that the law should not be used as a tool for political repression. 3. Symbolism of second chances. Biden framed his pardons within the narrative of second chances, a theme that resonates throughout American history and culture. By emphasizing that America is built on this promise, the act of pardoning Garvey aligns with Biden's broader agenda of promoting criminal justice reform. This can inspire hope and foster a sense of community among those who have been historically oppressed or marginalized by the legal system. For her broader clemency efforts, Garvey's pardon was part of a larger pattern in Biden's presidency, where he issued a record number of pardons and commutations, particularly for nonviolent offenders. This focus on reforming the treatment of individuals, especially those convicted of drug offenses, reflects a significant shift in the administration's approach to criminal justice. Many people may overlook the extensive nature of Biden's clemency efforts, which signal a commitment to addressing systemic issues within the justice system. 5. Legacy and future implications. The legacy of Garvey and the acknowledgement of his contributions through a presidential pardon may have implications for ongoing discussions about race justice and equity in America. It serves as a reminder of the need for continued advocacy for marginalized communities and the importance of recognizing and rectifying historical wrongs. The significance of this act extends beyond Garvey, offering a framework for understanding how past grievances can inform present and future policies. 6. Reactions and consequences. The reactions to Biden's pardons, particularly from figures like Don Scott, the first black Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, highlight the personal impact of these decisions. Scott's emotional response underscores the transformative potential of such acts of clemency, not just for individuals but for communities striving for justice and recognition. The interplay between personal narratives and broader systemic issues often goes unnoticed, yet it is essential for understanding the human aspect of policy decisions. In conclusion, while the pardon of Marcus Garvey may be seen as a final act of Biden's presidency, its significance lies in its historical context, its challenge to systemic injustices, and its symbolic representation of hope and redemption for marginalized communities. The broader implications of this decision reflect ongoing struggles for racial justice and the need for reform in the American legal system, themes that are crucial yet often overlooked in discussions surrounding presidential pardons. 1. Historical context and significance of Marcus Garvey's pardon. The posthumous pardon of Marcus Garvey by President Biden on January 19, 2025 is significant not only as a gesture of reconciliation but also as a recognition of the historical injustices faced by Garvey, a pioneering black nationalist leader. Convicted of mail fraud in the 1920s, his conviction is widely viewed as politically motivated, aimed at suppressing his growing influence in the African American community. Garvey's advocacy for racial pride and self-determination had a profound impact on civil rights movements and leaders such as Malcolm X. This pardon serves to correct a historical wrong and acknowledges the broader implications of Garvey's contributions to social justice and racial equality. 2. Biden's broader clemency efforts. President Biden's decision to issue a record number of pardons and commutations during his final days in office reflects a broader commitment to criminal justice reform. He has granted clemency to nearly 2,500 individuals, primarily those convicted of nonviolent drug offenses. This approach underscores a shift in the narrative surrounding incarceration and rehabilitation, emphasizing the need for second chances. Biden's actions align with his belief that America should be a nation built on the promise of redemption, which resonates with many who have faced systemic injustices within the criminal justice system. 3. Political motivations and implications of the pardons. The timing and nature of the pardons, particularly in the context of an incoming administration led by Donald Trump, raise questions about political motivations. Congressional leaders had been advocating for Garvey's pardon, highlighting a desire to rectify past governmental wrongs. Biden's pardons could be interpreted as a strategic move to reinforce democratic values and social justice, in contrast to the anticipated policies of the Trump administration, which had been characterized by a tough-on-crime approach. This action can be seen as an effort to signal to the public a commitment to progressive values during a politically contentious transition. For personal stories and impact of individual pardons, the pardons extended to individuals like Don Scott, Ravi Ragbur, and Kemba Smith Pradia illustrate the human aspect of Biden's clemency decisions. Each of these individuals has a personal story of redemption and advocacy, emphasizing the transformative power of second chances. For example, Don Scott, who served time for a drug offense and became the first black Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, expressed gratitude for the opportunity to reshape his life. These narratives not only highlight the importance of individual experiences in the broader context of criminal justice reform, but also serve to inspire others who may be facing similar circumstances, emphasizing resilience and the possibility of change. 1. President Jimmy Carter's pardons for Vietnam War draft evaders, 1977. On January 21, 1977. President Jimmy Carter issued a controversial pardon for Vietnam War draft evaders. The move was aimed at reconciling the nation after the divisive war and addressing the plight of those who had fled the country or refused to serve. Carter's clemency offered a path for many to reintegrate into society, reflecting a commitment to healing and forgiveness. This decision was seen as a significant step in acknowledging the moral complexities surrounding the Vietnam War and the personal choices made by individuals in that context. 2. President Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon, 1974. One of the most notable and contentious pardons in American history occurred when President Gerald Ford pardoned former President Richard Nixon on September 8, 1974, for any crimes he may have committed while in office, particularly related to the Watergate scandal. Ford's decision was intended to help the nation move forward from the political turmoil and division caused by the Watergate crisis. However, it sparked significant backlash and debate over the implications of presidential pardons and accountability, with many believing that Nixon's actions should have been subject to legal prosecution. 3. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's clemency for Japanese Americans, 1944. In the context of World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt granted clemency to Japanese Americans who had been interned during the war. While not a formal pardon in the traditional sense, Roosevelt's actions in later years, particularly the 1944 decision to allow some internees to return home, reflected a shift in public sentiment regarding the treatment of Japanese Americans. This act of clemency was part of a larger acknowledgement of the injustices faced by these individuals, and it laid the groundwork for future reparative actions by the U.S. government, culminating in the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which formally apologized and provided reparations to surviving internees. On January 19, 2025, President Joe Biden made headlines by posthumously pardoning Marcus Garvey among 4 other individuals. This act is seen as a significant closing chapter in Biden's presidency, emphasizing themes of redemption, justice, and societal healing. Historical context of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, a prominent black nationalist leader in the 1920s, was convicted of mail fraud, a charge viewed by many as politically motivated, aimed at suppressing his influential voice, advocating for racial pride and self-empowerment among black Americans. His legacy has had a lasting impact, inspiring civil rights leaders such as Malcolm X. Garvey's contributions to the black community and his vision for a united Africa resonate today, making his pardon symbolic of a broader recognition of historical injustices. Biden's approach to clemency. Biden's decision to pardon Garvey reflects a broader commitment to criminal justice reform that has characterized his administration. Over his term, Biden has issued more pardons and commutations than any previous president, primarily focused on nonviolent drug offenders. This approach underscores a growing consensus around the need for reform within the American justice system, particularly concerning the disproportionate impact of drug laws on minority communities. The significance of the pardons. Biden articulated that these pardons are aligned with the idea of America as a nation built on second chances. The act of pardoning Garvey and others serves not only as a corrective measure for historical wrongs but also as a profound statement about the values of forgiveness and rehabilitation. This perspective is particularly resonant in contemporary discussions about criminal justice, where there is an increasing push to focus on restorative justice rather than punitive measures. Public reception and political implications. The public response to Biden's pardons has been largely positive, particularly among civil rights advocates who view this as an overdue acknowledgement of Garvey's contributions and the political motivations behind his conviction. However, the timing of the pardons, just before the transition to a potentially more conservative administration under Donald Trump, raises questions about the future of criminal justice reform initiatives. The incoming administration may not prioritize these issues, and Biden's actions could be seen as a final effort to solidify a progressive legacy. Future implications for criminal justice reform. The pardons may set a precedent for future administrations regarding the handling of past injustices and the approach to criminal justice reform. If Biden's actions encourage a continued focus on rehabilitation and second chances, it could lead to more comprehensive reforms, including changes to sentencing laws and a push for the decriminalization of certain offenses. The challenge will be maintaining momentum and advocacy for these changes, especially in an increasingly polarized political environment. Societal impact and cultural reflection. As society reflects on the significance of figures like Marcus Garvey and the implications of Biden's pardons, there is potential for a renewed discourse on race justice and identity in America. The acknowledgement of Garvey's contributions may inspire a new generation to engage with issues of racial pride and empowerment, fostering a cultural renaissance that echoes his ideals. Conclusion. Biden's last day pardons, particularly of Marcus Garvey, represent a critical moment in the ongoing dialogue about justice and redemption in America. By addressing historical injustices and advocating for second chances, Biden seeks to leave a legacy that aligns with the evolving values of society. As the nation moves forward, the challenge will be to sustain the momentum for reform, ensuring that the ideals of redemption and justice continue to thrive in the American consciousness.